Welcome to the Basilica of St. Peter in Celdoro of Pavia, which contains the tomb of St. Augustine. We are inside the historic sacristy known as that of the Canons, which is a masterpiece of grotesque art. We are in the time frame of 1508 to 1561, as indicated by the dates that have been written on the columns. We are unaware of the author's name, but interestingly, we have knowledge of his facial appearance. We have a 99% certainty that he is depicted amidst a series of monstrous figures. Based on his attire, it appears he is of Spanish origin. He and his workshop is the creator of this grandiose sacristy of his illustration, characterized by the grotesque style. In contemporary usage, the term grotesque is commonly employed to describe something unattractive. However, its etymology can be traced back to the word grotto, and its original connotation was not associated with ugliness or distortion, but rather with absurdity. This shift in meaning occurred during the emergence of modern civilization in Europe, particularly within the realm of art. It marked a significant departure from the depiction of natural subjects, as artists began to explore a fusion of different possibilities. This pioneering approach, portraying non-natural elements or combining diverse concepts, revolutionized the artistic landscape during that era. We discover a boar transforming into a flower, we come across a merchant with the body of a lion, we encounter a depiction of an elephant, partially maybe a horse, and as a result, they are no more natural subjects. The reasons behind the term grotesques and the prominence of the word grotto are subjects of inquiry. In fact, these were discovered in the year 1499 or 1500 in Rome, when, due to the shifting of soil in a public park, a hole was found. Two boys with candles, perhaps braver than sensible, descended inside and found what is now known as the Mausoleum of Caesar Augustus, which is the final resting place of the Roman emperor and an important archaeological site. They described these artworks as extremely beautiful, which intrigued the renowned painter Raphael, who, at that moment, was painting the papal apartments in the Vatican for the Pope. He too, descending below, has discovered this art that was typical of classical Rome. He liked it a lot, so he immediately started reproducing it in the papal apartments. This fashion began to spread very early throughout Europe. In fact, just 8 years later, here in Pavia, we find the grotesques with their own identity and characteristics that are different from the Roman ones. The interesting thing is that typically grotesques are simply decorative. But in the instance of this sacristy, it is a series of thoughts of St. Augustine or of medieval Augustinian thoughts communicated through images. We have the ability to somehow illustrate some of these wonders that we encounter right in front of us. As an illustration, there is a fresco depicting this canopy that we are able to see. Inside, you will find a pedestal that can be observed. The pedestal is consistently a symbol for this cycle and serves as a point of origin. From that point, the thought or reading expands in an upward direction. In this particular scenario, adjacent to the pedestal, we encounter two peculiar creatures symbolizing vegetation. Indeed, as you can see, the snout is more similar to an orchid rather than an animal snout. The legs resemble roots and the tail resembles a flower. Why is this the case? The reason is that plants are living organisms, but they are firmly rooted and deeply embedded in the nutrient-rich soil of the earth. Instead, climbing onto the pedestal, we find two snails, very slow animals, that remain attached to the ground, to the soil, for their entire lives. This reflection is indeed about the elevation of the mind. It is a quest for the highest, tallest, fastest, and most creative thing in this entire world, where endless possibilities await to be explored. That's how it's presented. Between two snails, if you look closely, you'll find two human feet tied. Ascending the steps, above the snails, we come across two horses as though they were in mid-jump. Because obviously, unlike snails, horses are significantly faster and clearly have the ability to detach from the ground with ease. Above the horses, we find two typical herons of Pavia, that are birds, they fly, but they do not fly too high, certainly much higher than the horses. Above we find small birds, nightingales and others that fly so high they're lost from sight. But all this structure ends with the bust of the man. In fact, we see that it's a bit damaged by humidity, but we can distinguish very well the figure of the man holding a pen in one hand, and in the other hand he probably held a scroll or a piece of paper, a book. Because this structure is indicating to us the highest entity in the world, the highest living being in the world, the swiftest, most innovative entity is the human intellect. Yet there's a but. What is the reason behind the presence of bound feet on this figure that is situated at the pinnacle of the entire structure? Because there is something else beyond this, evidently? Yes, our mind, our thought is fast, is creative, is very, very, very high. It can reach truly great heights, but we must keep our feet on the ground, and we must scrupulously respect the structure of the reality around us. Let's call it rationality, the logical framework that governs our understanding of the world and guides our actions in a coherent and sensible manner. Otherwise, if we fall from the pedestal on which we have been placed by divine providence, not only do we fall ourselves, but we also drag down all creatures, the entire order of creation. Think about today's ecological issue. This sacristy also possesses a multitude of incredibly intriguing signs of great interest. For instance, there exist Chinese dragons, that is, adjacent to the Chinese dragon, we encounter an African baboon, creatures that we are familiar with via television, that we have observed in certain nature documentaries or in relation to remote societies, but for these nations, these were evidently a part of their reality. They are acquainted with these animals. On the other hand, for example, there is a Pekingese dog that was long thought to be exclusive to the Chinese imperial house, but in reality, we find it in a fresco in Pavia from the 1500s. On the other hand, there is the well-known Japanese monkey, so the society of Pavia at that time was truly an open society with significant connections to the surrounding world and even to quite distant and faraway places, making it a hub of cultural exchange and global interaction. The intriguing aspect is that, as I previously mentioned, it is a transposition of the works of St. Augustine and his thoughts into visual representations. Each and every architectural element present in this sacristy, where a pedestal can be found, holds within it a profound and contemplative meditation. Of the kind as we have heard, there are, for instance, 4 meditations on death. We know this because the skull is resting on the pedestal in various contexts, from which various symbols then develop. There are reflections on justice and a variety of other things to contemplate and ponder. It would be intriguing if someone interested could study this sacristy. Unfortunately, the archives and the entire library were scattered as a result of the suppression of the convent, leaving behind only a small amount of remaining material. However, individuals who have an interest in art history, the culture of Pavia, and possess knowledge in theology, philosophy, and the writings of St. Augustine would undoubtedly have the capacity to reconstruct numerous of these thoughts in order to bring them into the present day once more. Behind me is the painting by Tassinari that is the property of this sacristy. We are presently engaged in the process of restoring it. This restoration project was made possible thanks to your generous contributions as well.